I would just like to say it's great to see all three levels of government working together, and this devastation has certainly touched every heart and every family in our region, and we are very appreciative of the levels of government and especially federal government coming to the party and caring for our community. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Madam Mayor, to my good mate Beck and to Dan. Thanks for having me. This is now the second phase of our recovery. The first phase was about putting money in people's pockets. That was through the disaster recovery payments, making sure that people had the dignity and respect they deserved. But then the initial tranches, and listening to farmers today, a dairy farmer, around the $75,000 grants that we're looking to put out for those farmers that need to help with the recovery, and small businesses yesterday, $50,000 to help them in the recovery, and interest-free, repayment-free loans to get their cash flow up and going. That's the initial tranches we're looking at, and in fact there'll be further announcements for South Australia as we continue to work through, as we did with Victoria, in the clean-up, in helping making sure that the clean-up costs are shared between state and federal government so that more money goes into households and goes into small businesses in this clean-ups, but the insurance companies don't take advantage of that. We're saying to them, don't be tricky with this. This isn't for them, it's for the people who have been impacted, and if you do, we will square up with you. The Treasurer is going to make sure that we'll go after you. We've all got a responsibility. There's been an outpouring of support from Australians in supporting our fellow Australians who have done it tough through this. Everyone has put the shoulder to the wheel, and it's time the insurance companies do also. But we also want to make sure that from here on in, that our recovery is locally led, not Canberra led. This is not just about rebuilding the infrastructure that's needed that the council will obviously tell me about today, but this is about, more importantly, rebuilding the lives of those Australians that have been impacted, and that is a holistic approach, whether it be through mental health, through education, but above all, it'll be about building back better. Building for the future, making sure that we are more resilient for future disasters, as they will come. But we need to be proud of the men and women that have put their lives on the line, that have saved countless lives and countless homes. And tragically, while we've lost 28 Australians, 4 of those who are volunteers prepared to give the ultimate sacrifice to their community and their nation, we have done an amazing job in staring down this disaster, and it's now about the recovery and being positive about the future. Our initial investment of $2 billion on top of the initial disaster recovery payments, and then also on top of what the Australian Defence Force means that the Australian federal government is committed, and we now want to make sure that there is a coordinated approach between all levels, federal, state and local, but also charities. There is a responsibility now, and Andrew Colvin's not with me today. He's in Canberra making sure that we finalise our approach with charities to ensure that there is bang for buck for those Australians that are donated to them, that we coordinate between all levels of government, that no one falls through the cracks. We'll be holding to account our own selves in making sure our payments get out, but we'll also be saying to the states we expect to see transparencies and KPIs, for want of a better term, for them getting the money that we're giving them to deliver through these programs, because speed is important. Getting the rebuilding of these communities and these lives is so important, and that's about getting money out there, but also getting boots on the ground, particularly around mental health. And that'll be a marathon, not a sprint. People will go through this grief through different stages, and we need to make sure that they're not only here now, but they'll be here well into the future. So this is about me, and now Andrew, in the coming weeks, getting around, sitting at kitchen tables, talking to those impacted, and making sure that the solution here in this part in Adelaide Hills will be different to KI, as it will be different to Malakuta, as it will in Stanthorpe, as it will be in Tenterfield. So we're going to listen and learn and make sure that we act collaboratively and cooperatively with all levels of government and the charities.
Minister, you just hinted there at additional funding for South Australia coming down the pipeline. In particular, what space would that funding be?
Well, obviously, we announced last week, particularly around the clean-up and the cost of the clean-up. And that in Victoria and New South Wales will probably be in the potential of around $50,000 that could save a household or a business. And what we're saying is that's not going into the pockets of the insurance companies. That's to go back into the pockets of those people that have been impacted for the rebuilding of the infrastructure that's been knocked down. So that's a saving not for insurance companies but for individuals and businesses. We'll also be looking at different programs around around probably supporting our local governments further. Now we've already put $1 million into around 33 local governments, and we're now, after the agency, Andrew Colvin and I have been given the opportunity to extend that to other councils, and looking here today, Mount Barker has a real case for extra funding, and that's about empowering local government. Because if we want a local solution to this, the local government is usually the best conduit to its people. And that'll be on top of the Cat C funding. And the Category C funding is about just rebuilding. The Category A, B and C funding is about rebuilding the infrastructure that's needed. But this is above that. This is about helping the community rebuild as a community, coming together and empowering our local council to understand and know how to do that best, not someone from Canberra, and to have input from our federal and state members to make sure we do that right. And the $1 million, we're trusting the local government. We're not saying there's strings tied. We're saying, you know your people best, go and spend it, rebuild your community, build the resilience and strength within them, and come back together and put your arms around one another and rebuild together. And that's what this $1 million is about. But obviously, Andrew Colvin and I will have a conversation. We're not going to mess around with this. We've been given the imprimatur to get it out the door, and we need to make sure that it's spent wisely. It's Australian taxpayers' money, and we'll do it quickly.
Minister, just on another subject, but still here in the Adelaide Hills, the Tea Tree Gully Golf Club received $190,000 under the McKenzie Sports Program. That was to renovate their foyer to attract more weddings. Do you think that's appropriate?
Well, all programs that were approved under the sports program were within the guidelines, and I think the Auditor-General detailed that quite explicitly in his report. So obviously it was a much needed investment in this community, and it doesn't matter whether you're here in the Adelaide Hills or in my far western Queensland electorate of Maranoa. It all has an impact in bringing communities together and making sure that sport is at the forefront of that, and it's all been done within the guidelines of that program.
Do you think that money would be better spent developing sporting skills rather than attracting functions?
Well, you've got to understand that sport plays an integral part of not only bringing the community together, but building economic resilience within those communities, and I think that's a good thing. You've got to be able to stimulate these small regional communities, and we shouldn't be afraid to do that. I think that's a good thing. And if you can do both, not only bring the community together through sport, but also have an economic stimulus that continues to grow the economic strength and social well-being of a community, I think that's a damn good thing. I think that's bang for buck, better than any other program I've seen.
But Minister, do you concede?
Sorry.
Minister, do you concede there's a perception problem though with how Senator McKenzie handled the sports program?
Well, look, the challenge we get is that every time a dollar's spent in regional Australia, everyone says it's pork barrelling. Well, you know what? 30% of Australians live in regional Australians. We deserve our fair share as well. You know what? It's not all just about the cities. And you know what? Every now and then there is some money put into regional Australia, and that's a good thing, because when the regions are strong, Australia's strong. We are the economic engine room of this nation, and we need to make sure that we support local governments, state governments in empowering our communities to grow and to have that social fabric that metropolitan areas have. I think we're very quick to say just because we spend a cent in regional Australia it's pork barrelling. Well, no, it's not. It's about regional Australia just getting their fair share.